he fails. Not because of outside enemies, but because he cannot master himself. Raavan acknowledged Lord Ram's divinity, but his ego kept him shackled. And Raavan had sexually assaulted the Apsara Rambha, and a terrible crime. It was a terrible crime for which he was punished with a terrible curse, and rightly so. Namaste and welcome to Immortal India, where we dive deep into our ancient stories, not to blindly worship or blindly reject, but to understand. I'm Amish, and today let's talk about Raavan, not just the villain whose effigy burns every Dussehra, but the man whose story, when you look closely, holds a mirror to our own lives. Let's begin with the basics. Most of us grew up seeing Raavan as the demon king with 10 heads, arrogance personified, the perpetual antagonist to the ideal hero, our God, Lord Ram. But is that all there is? Bharat, our land, is far too complex for black and white answers. Every region, every tradition adds color, compassion, and contradiction to Raavan's image. Travel to Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh and you'll find temples dedicated to Raavan. Yes, temples dedicated to Raavan, often tucked away in small towns away from mainstream rituals. Here, he is honored not for his villainy but for his scholarship. The Brahmins of certain communities even claim Raavan as their ancestor, referencing his legendary mastery of the Shastras. In Jodhpur, there's a temple where villagers perform annual pujas for Raavan, seeking wisdom and courage for the coming year. And of course, as many of us know, there are traditions that Raavan was born close to Delhi at a place called Bisrak. Now, let's head south. In parts of Tamil Nadu, Raavan holds the distinction of being the son-in-law of the land, thanks to his marriage to Mandodari, a daughter of the region. Stories told in villages paint him as a man of culture and music and devotion. There are some modern Tamilians who even have the name Ravanan. Of course, there are traditions in the north too that Mandodari was from the Rajasthan MP border area. But that's the beauty of India. Multiple truths, each respecting the other. Now let's move to Vidarbha in Maharashtra or certain pockets of Kerala, and the stories shift again. Local folklore sings of Raavan's musical genius and his wisdom. He is not reduced to the mustache-twirling villain, but remembered as a tragic hero whose flaws undid his greatness. And what does this show? That Raavan is not a cardboard character, not easily boxed in. Across Bharat, his reputation is two-sided. Feared by many, respected by some, but unforgettable for all. Now let's turn to the Shastras, the ancient texts that preserve these stories. Raavan's love for the Mahadev, Lord Shiva, is the stuff of legend. The story goes that Raavan was so devoted to Lord Shiva that he wanted Lord Shiva to live in Lanka so that Raavan could see him all the time. Lord Shiva explained that while he does love his devotees, he cannot leave Kailash mountain. Now Raavan, the arrogant Raavan, decided to try to lift the entire Kailash mountain to carry it to his own kingdom. Lord Shiva was amused but firm. He pressed his toe down and crushed Raavan's ego along with the mountain. Humbled, Raavan sang the Shiva Tandav Stotram, one of the most profound hymns to the Mahadev ever composed. Even today it echoes in temples across India. Shaivites like me, when we hear the Tandav Stotra, rongte khade ho jate hain. But as always, brilliance, Raavan's brilliance, was often accompanied by vices. This is true of many brilliant men, to be honest. Ravan's deep knowledge of the Vedas, Ayurveda, statecraft, and astrology was legendary. He is said to have authored works like the Arka Prakasha on Ayurveda, which contributed to ancient medical traditions and knowledge. His expertise in astronomy was so advanced that Lankan scholars became sought-after advisors in royal courts across the subcontinent. Culturally too, Raavan left a mark. He invented the Ravana Hatta, a bowed string instrument played in Rajasthan till today and considered a forerunner of the Western violin. You would have heard this instrument in many Bollywood songs. Trust me, you'll recognize it when you hear it. Just Google it. In any case, we'll play it along with this video as well. Folk musicians in Rajasthan still play the Raavan Hatta during festivals, a tribute to the 10-headed demon king. But all this brilliance had its shadows: arrogance, lust, uncontrollable anger. The Shastras never shy away from showing us this paradox. Raavan was a scholar devotee undone by his own flaws. Let's talk about leadership. In stories passed down, Lanka under Raavan's reign was called Sone Ki Lanka, a city of endless gold, prosperity, and beauty. Artists, craftsmen, and thinkers were welcomed at his court. Raavan's administrative skills made the island powerful and stable. His policies are said to have fostered trade and built a flourishing cultural hub. Lanka was not a dark kingdom overrun by demons, but a city admired for its wealth. But power has its temptations, and Raavan's pride grew with every victory, and his sense of destiny blinded him to the dangers of unchecked ambition. What of Raavan's relationships? As a father, he was protective and affectionate. Stories say his children, especially Meghnad, were raised with deep love and rigorous learning. He believed in preparing them for leadership, giving them wisdom and courage. But even the most capable of rulers and loving of family men can give in to rage and lust if they don't control themselves. And Raavan had sexually assaulted the Apsara Rambha. This is there in the Ramayana. And a terrible crime. It was a terrible crime for which he was punished with a terrible curse, and rightly so. Even at the end of the Ramayana, when there are ample opportunities for Raavan to calm down and return goddess Sita to Lord Ram, he would have prevented the war that would have ultimately destroyed him if he had done so. But he refuses. His rage and ego do not let him see the truth, that he cannot defeat Lord Ram. Peel back more layers and you find Raavan's humanity. Some versions of the Ramayana say that when Raavan first encountered Lord Ram, he did so disguised as a Brahmin priest, a scholar seeking debate rather than battle. Lord Ram is said to have recognized Raavan, obviously, and engaged him in deep intellectual exchanges. The texts point to a tragic truth. Raavan acknowledged Lord Ram's divinity, but his ego kept him shackled, and he was unable to surrender to the divine. And then there's the most jaw-dropping episode. According to many folk traditions on the battlefield, as the final battle neared its end, Lord Ram sent Lord Lakshman to Raavan, who lay wounded, his life slipping slowly away. Why? When a wise man is near death, Lord Ram told Lord Lakshman, there is knowledge to be learnt. In fact, Lord Ram even told Lord Lakshman to treat Raavan with respect when he spoke to him. Raavan, dying, parted with insights on statecraft and leadership, a gesture that tells us wisdom must be sought even in one's enemy. Now one can ask, why talk so much about Raavan? Why not just stick to Lord Ram, Dharma personified? We can learn so much from him. Because Raavan's story is our own mirror. Here is a man of legendary intellect, musical genius, devotion and strength. And yet, he fails. Not because of outside enemies, but because he cannot master himself. How often do we see this around us? Brilliance undone by arrogance, where intellectual genius is accompanied by rudeness, ego, and an inability to work with others. We also see devotion corrupted into self-righteousness, where someone doesn't focus on their own devotion but is more intent on criticizing and attacking others. भाई तुमने ये ठीक से नहीं किया, ये पूजा ठीक से नहीं किया, ये नमाज ठीक से नहीं किया. Why are you focusing on that rather than your own devotion? This is not a lesson unique to India. Across world cultures, the greatest fall when inner flaws outweigh outer achievements. In our great epic Raavan, it's not just Lord Ram who teaches us morality, but Raavan too. With all his tragic grandeur, he also teaches us humility, discipline, and the danger of unchecked ego. That's what we can learn from Raavan. Let's wrap up with the big idea. Raavan wasn't just a villain. He was a musician, a brilliant scholar, a mighty ruler, a Shiv Bhakt, and yes, a tragic hero. His rise and fall teach us that brilliance without humility is dangerous. Devotion without discipline can slide into hypocrisy and arrogance. And usually the greatest enemy is not outside, but within ourselves. When we burn his effigy on Dussehra, Raavan's effigy on Dussehra, perhaps the real effigy we are meant to destroy is the arrogance and ego within ourselves. So, Raavan's story survives not just because he was the enemy of Lord Ram, but also because in his rise and fall, Raavan holds up a mirror for all of us. Does society's image of us match the truth within? Can we truly master our own flaws before we point at others? It's very easy to point at others, right? Much more difficult to look at ourselves. Well, if you liked this episode and if you thought it was enlightening, please hit like and subscribe below so that you can receive a notification when the next episode launches. And from now, from me, Amish, thank you for joining Immortal India.